You're listening to STAGR Cast, brought to you by STAGR Gear. This is episode number 4 of STAGR Cast. We're back down here in New Hampshire again, me and Isaac, and we're sitting here with Roscoe Blaisdell. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes.
Okay. And we're going to talk some deer hunting, talk some deer habitat, and kind of go from there. But for those that don't know you, I know you're pretty prevalent in Facebook groups and stuff. That's where I noticed you, in the New Hampshire deer hunting group and Vermont deer hunting group. For those that don't know you, why don't you give like a minute or two background on what you do, where you hunt, type of stuff, and how you get into it.
Okay. I was raised in North Haverhill, New Hampshire, right on Vermont border, so I'm half Vermonster. And we had a woodlot in Reigate, about 20 minutes north of there, so that's where I got my first deer when I was 13.
Yeah.
I've been hunting since I was 7. Dad had put me on a stump, and I thought a bear was going to eat me, but now I eat bears. So then I hunt New Hampshire too, but I've moved. I'm in southern New Hampshire now, but I still drive up to Vermont every year on our woodlot. But I'm a land surveyor, wetland scientist, and septic designer, so I work outside all the time, and I see a lot of forests. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not all land is created equal. We can talk about that later. And I'm a Boone and Crockett measurer, Pope and Young measurer, and Long Hunter Society measurer. That's muzzleloader animals.
Oh,
okay.
Cool.
Yeah. And
What's the minimum on that? I never...
Long Hunter?
Yeah.
130 inches.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
So we do our best with the New Hampshire Antler Skull Trophy Club, which I was president for many years, and I finally decided that's too many years. I stopped being the president. But we knew that there's a lot of big bucks in New Hampshire, but we didn't have a record book, and we didn't have a club. And I was reporting one of my deer, and Charlie Foote, one of our best buck hunters in Hampshire, he was standing there saying, and I was telling him about, I bet we have a lot of big deer in New Hampshire. They're not getting recognized. He says, oh, yes, they are. We just started a club. And they'd started it 6 months before. So I said, I want to get into this. So the rest is history. But New Hampshire, we're shooting a Boone and Crockett deer, if not every year, every other year, sometimes 2 or 3 a year. And everyone says how great Maine is. Well, Maine is 3 times the size of New Hampshire. Yep. And they have 3 times as many deer killed. We're shooting almost as many Boone and Crockett's as Maine is. So I'm proud of New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. And when I see someone else getting a big buck, it's just that hometown pride. I enjoy getting to hold these racks.
There's something in your soil. Let me tell you.
Well,
it's incredible over here.
It's not the soil.
No?
Want to dive right into that? Let's dive right into it. Let's talk. Okay. So you said you primarily hunt Vermont and New Hampshire nowadays for the most part.
Yes. Every year I hunt both states. I lived right on the border in North Haverhill, and you go to a deer checking station in New Hampshire, and there'd be pictures on the wall. There'd be 30 deer reported, and 2 or 3 of them are 200 pounders. Mm-hmm. Then you go to the Reigate side, on the Vermont side of the river, and there'd be twice as many deer, and they're almost all spike horns, and the occasional 160 pounder. And I always wondered, why is that? I'm a member of QDMA, Quality Deer Management, and they have a really good magazine, which biologists, write the articles, and they were telling about states that have too many does versus bucks. That hurts the quality of the rack. So in New England, it's tough for a buck to survive in any state because all they're doing is chasing. They're not eating hardly anything. Then you get to December and you get a bad winter coming, and the biggest bucks are going to die if they're too stressed. Well, Vermont had twice as many does per square mile than like New Hampshire. So,
really?
So you have the bucks couldn't keep up with the does. They're just chasing, and they can't keep up. They're just wearing themselves down. They're doing twice the effort. And then some of the deer don't get bred because there's just so many does and not enough bucks. Well, a deer that doesn't get bred in November, he's going to get bred in December, then January. Well, that deer is going to be a couple months behind. By the time you get to the fall, this deer just doesn't have, they're going to be behind. They're going to be a spike horn. Mm-hmm. And most, like a year and a half old deer in New Hampshire, they're commonly 6-pointers and stuff like that. We get spike horns in Vermont. It's just spike.
A lot of spikes.
Or the little point on it. So, and this is fact, I'm saying. This is the biologist. So, I love hunting Vermont. And I always would get my spike horn every year, and I always get my doe with a bow. I generally would get 3 deer a year. Then they made the antler restrictions. I'm getting 150 to 180 pound deer every year in Vermont now because of the antler restrictions. It's
that was
made
the biggest difference maker for you.
Huge difference. I mean, I've been hunting since the early 60s. It was never like that. I'd rarely ever see an 8-pointer. It just didn't happen. Yeah, I shot a few 8-pointers back then, but I'm getting 8-pointers every year in Vermont, just sitting.
You said your average age in Vermont was like 5.5, 6.5,
or more.
Or more.
Yeah. I've got some that are 9. Yeah.
So then, what I was saying earlier about the soil, what are your 5.5, 6.5-year-old bucks in Vermont looking compared to your 5.5, 6.5-year-old bucks in New Hampshire? What's the comparison there?
What's happened with the antler restrictions? They're a year older, but pardon my French, they have a shit rack still.
Yeah.
It's just night and day. With our record book in New Hampshire, we shoot so many big rack bucks, and Vermont's got their good ones occasionally, but
not the frequency.
It's not. They're not close to New Hampshire. Not even close there.
So do you think when they get in that older age, the fact that they've been running around chasing more does, that has the impact on their horns as they get older? Or is it more like, is the forage different or the genetic pool different?
Well,
what do you think?
For 100 years, they've had too many does.
Okay.
So you can't just snap your finger, okay, we're going to shoot more does. It's genetic. Even something like can't be, it's ingrained into them. If they even it out for 10 or 20 or 30 years, it will get better, but you can't, it's affected them.
And one thing I've brought up on a couple podcasts before this is that the White Mountains and this whole area is a lot younger than the Green Mountains. Like geologically, like the Green Mountains are, I forget the number, but a lot older. So I'm wondering if maybe the nutrients like in the ground is just depleted.
I have a Vermont friend that keeps telling me your deer are big because of your soil.
Yeah.
No,
you don't think so.
We have the same soil.
Really?
We have the same trees.
No kidding.
We've had proper management for a very long time. The buck to doe ratio has been good for forever.
No kidding.
Yeah. So Vermont's improving.
Yep.
And but
it's going to take a while if you
it would take an awful long time. Yeah.
Like 100 years or something like that or more.
It would take a long time. I mean, and people listening will say Roscoe doesn't know what he's talking about.
No,
but
I mean
I've lived on the border and I've seen it in the deer reporting station and the record book. It's just
there's no denying the facts of it.
Well, my son and I both got monsters this year on the same, within a few hundred yards of each other, and there was a 21-pointer shot a mile from there. There's other. This is all in like one town, and they're behind every other tree.
I think in your area, your region of New Hampshire, I think bucks have a lot easier a time getting old just because of the way your woods is too. I think that plays into it.
Well, we don't have the harsh winters.
No, you don't have the harsh winters. You're very thick woods and a lot of swamps, it seems like. So I think that's great habitat for deer to get to age, where it seems like a lot of Vermont's just hardwoods. And if you don't cut it, it's just a giant hardwood ridge, and it's hard for deer to get age when, they become a 3.5-year-old 6-pointer and they're getting smoked at 200 yards in the maples, So I think habitat has a lot to do with it too. You guys have some phenomenal habitat.
Yeah, well, as a land surveyor, I see a lot of property, and some land is just sterile. I mean, it's big mature trees. Yeah, it's got some big oaks, and oh wow, look at all the deer tracks. I'm going to sit here. Well, 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Deer don't like to get killed, so I own a lot of land. I'll buy sterile land and I'll turn it into a mecca. And I've built over 70 food plots in Vermont and Hampshire.
Really?
That's impressive.
Yeah, I don't own a tractor.
All
I
by
mean, I
hand.
have a friend that a couple years ago, I didn't have the time to do my one food plot. I said, you don't have time to do one food plot? So the food plots have made my deer, they have a lot more food. Okay, right now the snow's all melted, and you go through the woods and there's no green or anything. You go to my food plot where the clover is, and there's clover popping up already. So the doe is eating that clover right now, picking on that. It's making really good milk. And when that fawn is born, that fawn's going to be so much more ahead of a fawn a mile away that didn't have instant green.
Yep.
And being in the QDMA, I read a lot on this type of stuff, and it makes sense.
Do you plant turnips?
Yeah, I turnips and kale,
Yep.
and I always have a 2-part food plot. Half of it would be clover, which I might get 5 years out of.
Yep.
Then the other part would be an annual for turnips and kale, and I have happy deer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as I said, I have a lot of land, big wood lots, and I'll make a sanctuary out of big parts of it, so the deer aren't bothered. And they're happy, and then they come out, and then I blast them.
Do you do a good bit of predator control in your areas, or you try to, or?
I may be going out tonight. 2 nights in a row, they've been at my bait.
Okay.
So when we're done with this,
So
I'm
you're
going to
you're actually trying to get them out of there.
I got 15 coyotes last year.
15.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's-
so you're doing your part then.
Yeah,
That's huge.
That's huge.
Yeah,
we need more of that.
I trap. I shoot them during deer season, and I bait, and I'll sleep all night, and I have a driveway alarm, and 2 a.m. it goes off, and I open the window and shoot them.
Hey,
kidding.
that's perfect.
Hey.
Imagine how much better it'd be if every licensed hunter, every licensed deer hunter in the state would take 1 coyote a year.
Oh
The
yeah.
impact
There
that would
wouldn't be
have
any
on-
more coyotes left.
Well, they say they'll kill up to 20 deer.
Yeah.
And I mean, they really kill a lot of fawns in the spring. Yeah.
Wow.
I think we have a bear issue now in Vermont
Lot
with
of
killing
bear.
fawns.
Lot of
Yeah, I have a biologist friend that's in Massachusetts, and we are talking about that type of stuff. And he said they radio collared some fawns, and they found out bear were killing more fawns than coyotes.
Oh yeah.
And bobcats were killing a lot too.
Yep.
So what they found was a bear, when in the spring, when it's a brand new fawn and the fawn just sits there for the first few weeks, they don't run. And so a bear will just be a lot more methodical. They'll just do a little grid and go back and forth, where a coyote might not. So the very first fawns really get wiped out by the bears.
No
Interesting.
kidding. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. It seems like I know in the area that I'm at in Vermont, we have a ton of bear right now. Nobody's really hunting them either.
Yeah, I mean, you get into late summer, then the coyotes are probably killing more than a bear. But it's just they're smarter.
The early season,
and
yeah.
fawns do have a scent to them. They say, oh, they don't. They do have a scent to them.
So they get close and wind them and find them.
They just,
No
Well,
kidding.
now that we kind of talked about the differences of what you think between Vermont and Hampshire, I know you do a good bit of managing kind of the areas that you hunt. So how do you go about like managing your areas in Vermont? Because like you told us before, you're killing, on average 5.5 to 6.5-year-old deer in Vermont, which isn't easy to do. Do you go do a different style of management in the areas that you hunt in Vermont, or is it how do you go about?
Is it the
killing
same
those?
as what you do in New Hampshire?
Yeah,
You
exactly.
can't shoot a 9.5-year-old buck if you shoot a spike horn or a 3-pointer. So like in New Hampshire, I may see 15 to 20 bucks a year. And it's easy because I know I'm going to see a big buck. If someone's hunting for 5 years and they haven't seen a buck and they finally see one, shoot it. We all like to eat, but you're not going to get it on my property. So on my properties, New Hampshire, Vermont, it has to be at least an 8-pointer with a spread past the ears. I was talking to a guy the other day, and he showed me a picture of a 10-pointer he got in New Hampshire, and it weighed 115 pounds, and he was so proud of that. That was a 1.5-year-old buck that would have been a Boone Crockett in 2 years. That genetically
Was just
and I felt so bad
yeah.
about that. But I have time to hunt, so I'm blessed. I know if I try a lot harder, if it makes it a little bit easier, I do whatever it takes. Yeah, but so I'm mostly a stand hunter. I've shot deer always. I've tracked and shot bucks in New Hampshire, Vermont, and Maine. And I've shot them still hunting and rattling and all the different ways. But the older I get, the more I sit. Hunting in Saskatchewan for 20 years, it toughened me to sit all day because the world record could walk in front of you any time. So I've learned how to dress properly and just sit. And those bucks are coming out at 2 p.m. or 11. And in New Hampshire, Vermont, I would always hunt 2 hours, sit for 2 hours, walk all day, then sit the last 2 hours.
Yep.
I didn't realize if you just sat there, they'd come out at 11 o'clock. I thought they'd all be sitting there. When it's the rut,
10 to 2.
it's just, it's November 4th or 5th, something like that. For the next week and a half, I'm sitting.
Yep.
And I'm just waiting. And even my best stand, I might not see anything for a couple of days, and boom, here it comes. So you just have to,
You have to have confidence in that area you're in.
Yeah.
That's huge.
And so, like most of, 99% of stand hunting is sitting in the right place. If you're sitting in a dumb place, good luck.
Yeah.
So I hunt pinch points. As a land surveyor, I know how to read a map. I could find them before I even get there. But I just walk around, and I'll find where two swamps will come together. And just standing there looking at it, it doesn't look special. I'm not seeing a bunch of tracks because they might be 100 foot wide where they're crossing. And they're not leaving a lot of sign, but I know they have to go through. Yeah, they have to run the gauntlet. And then I put a camera up, and boom. Once I've discovered that's a good stand, I take the camera out of there. Big, smart deer sometimes don't like cameras. Yeah. My Vermont property, I have a pinch point. It's just really not fair sitting there. Every year, if I don't get a buck the first day, I get one the second day. And it's just a big cliff on one side. Then on the other side of the cliff, it's just a saddle where they come through, and you just sit and wait. And my father discovered it about 30 years ago, and I've kind of tweaked it, but I sit there all day. About 5 years ago, we had a real tough winter, and it snowed real deep. It was the next to last day of muzzleloader season in December. It snowed a whole bunch. Then it rained, and it froze, and it made a crust. So I sat on the stand, and I had 5 deer go by, then 9 deer go by, then 2 deer go by. What's going on here? I wasn't dressed to sit all day. It's December after the rut, so I walked around. I came back an hour later. As I was getting there, another 5 deer are going through there. I saw 32 deer at one stand
Wow.
in Vermont.
Wow.
And what it was a migration.
Oh,
It had
yep.
gotten to be just enough snow.
Yep.
So there's a whole bowl there coming out of a 5-mile radius.
Yep.
And they'd all come through. People are probably over there hunting, and
Yeah, they're gone.
they're gone. So I put a camera up. Well, I sat there the next day, dark to dark. I saw 1 deer. So I hit it the right day.
Yep.
And of all that 30 deer, there was 1 spike horn. So I put a camera there, and when I came back the next spring, I checked it. And several weeks after I put the camera, then the big bucks started going through. They didn't have to come through.
They
with
waited
those.
a little longer.
They were
Yeah.
big enough. Their legs were tall enough. They
Yeah.
didn't have to come through.
They're a little more stubborn than the doe groups.
Yeah, they were just they could handle
Yeah.
that deep snow in the crust.
Right. Switching gears a little bit, Roscoe, how particular are you with your entrance on these stands that you have? Are you really particular with how you're getting into these places?
I am, but sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. So that stand in Vermont, I have to walk right over the main trail,
Yep.
and I'm looking that way, and they walk right over it. So I've been lucky with that. I do pay attention to the wind, but the wind comes from 8 directions,
Yep.
and the deer come from 10 different directions.
Yep.
So I know which way the wind is. I always have milkweed and all that, so to check the wind. And if I see a deer and it's downwind, I know I just have to be ready to shoot quickly. I can't just let him. I can't dilly dally and let him work
Yeah.
its way because
Yeah.
I'm careful with my scent, but I mean, as I tell people, if you go in the bathroom in your house, then you spray. What do you smell? You smell crap and spray.
Yeah.
You can't mask human scent.
Interesting.
I agree with that. Yep.
So when you're looking at a new spot, as far as trail cameras go, are you always looking at like geological features, or are you kind of looking for scrapes and stuff as well when you're setting cameras?
Yeah, I'll put them on scrape some, and you'll get the little buck at it, and the big ones at a rub. I mean, if it's a giant rub, it's probably a big buck ripped it up, but
Yeah.
then I'll get a picture of a spike horn just checking it out too. And I've made mock scrapes. I haven't had a lot of luck with it, but it's just something fun to do and to check it out. And with my food plots, I'll put cameras on the food plots. I rarely hunt on a food plot. The food plot just gives the deer nutrition, and it kind of keeps them on my property more. And I'll sit on a pinch point, and they're going from the thick, nasty stuff that I make, go by me on their way to the food plot. Having a forestry degree, I know what trees to cut to help the forest. And I mean, if it's a forked maple, all these branches come out, I'll just cut it down and make a mess. If it's so messy you don't want to walk in it, boy, the deer are going to like it. So I've turned some of my properties into that. And I mean, in my Vermont land, I've made some good habitat there too. I favor the oaks. My neighbors are cutting the oaks down. Well, I'm not. It's money in the bank. Let the trees grow more. They're getting bigger, and I got the acorns.
Yep. If you have the acorns, you got the deer. Right?
Yeah. If everybody has acorns,
Yeah.
then good luck. So I have more acorns.
Yeah, I've actually I've talked to a guy down in he lives in Georgia in the mountains, and he says everything's oak down there. Like these big mountains, they're just covered in oaks, and he says it's impossible to pattern the deer because there's just everywhere they go, they have feed. But which we're actually kind of lucky in the Northeast where we can narrow it down.
Yeah. Well, when you have a really good acorn crop and you have food plots, good luck, because the deer prefer acorns over food plots. So I like bad acorn ears.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
Do you have acorns up in your Vermont spot as well, or more down this way? And
I'm in the Crockett River Valley up there, and I got beautiful veneer quality oak, really big. And we had a lot of acorns this year. Down here in Rockingham County, New Hampshire, we didn't have any acorns.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of white oak around here?
I own a mountain of white oak down here.
Really? I heard that they're very good for deer.
Yeah, it's maybe like a 6-year rotation of a good year, but when we have a good white oak year, the bear, I mean, everything's in there just gobbling it right up.
It just sucks all the wildlife right in, huh?
Yeah, it's just twice as much nutrient in it. They don't have the tannins, so they're not bitter to the taste. So
we don't have many in Vermont. I know in the county, I'm in Rutland County, Vermont, and I couldn't tell you of one. Not one white oak.
There's not many.
No.
I planted a couple in Reigate, and they're getting ready.
Did you? That's awesome.
Good. Cool.
So you were the president of the New Hampshire Antler and Skull Club for how long?
Oh, it was over 20 years.
Over 20 years.
Yeah.
So you probably have noticed some things in that time, like correlations with weather and maybe, I don't know, like, have you noticed anything like with years where you guys might produce more 200-pounders or?
Well, there's some big things. So every year I coordinate the trophy program for New Hampshire. So when you shoot a deer over 200 pounds at the check station, you could fill out a form, have it witnessed, and you send it to me. Then I send them the patch, and we make our list. About 25 years ago, Pittsburgh used to have 20 to 25 200-pound bucks every year.
Yep.
Now they have 3 every year.
Really?
It's dropped
Pittsburgh is broken.
Really?
Pittsburgh is definitely broken. So I don't know what's going on up there, but there's a lot of green jackets.
A lot of green jackets, right? A lot of green plates. I
Green
think,
plates,
too.
yeah. I tell you, the first day of Vermont season, there's a lot of New Hampshire plates in Vermont too.
Yep.
But and racks and weight don't always go together. They'll send a picture of this 250-pound buck, and it'll have a little 6-point rack on it. So sometimes they just don't correlate. Or our state record clucky buck, 187 inches, it weighed in the 170s. So so they just don't go together always. But about 5 years ago, like the average year will get like 170 200-pounders in Hampshire.
That's a lot.
5 years ago, we got 270 200-pounders. This past year, we had about the same.
Oh, my gosh.
270 200-pounders.
I don't think we should put this information out there.
Yes.
Let's keep this to
Scratch
ourselves.
that.
And the biggest was 260. Last year, the biggest was 270. And it was a Boone and Crockett
Yeah,
rack.
I saw that head down at the Northeast show.
Evans, Mark, one of our measurers, Mark Evans, he got a 248-pounder 5 years before that.
Wow.
And Charlie Foote, one of our measurers, he had the biggest in the state that year, 250. So
Wow.
we got some people that walk the walk,
Yep.
But then we'll have years that we don't get as many. So, I mean, I've talked to different people about it, and like if you have a real bad winter and a lot of fawns get killed, maybe 4 years later when they would have been a 200-pounder, well, there's less of them because the bad winter. It's just hard to tell.
Right.
But the better the weather, like if the winter before was really harsh, they're not going to do as good. A deer in New England is just tough living for it. So if they're not doing good, they're not going to waste their energy on putting bone on their head. They're putting into staying alive. So like with my properties, they have all the food they want. They can waste all the energy on their head they want because they're, I've logged it. There's a lot of brush for them to eat and different stuff, and so they can waste their energy on their head. If it's a bad winter, it will affect the rack.
Yeah.
Generally, I mean, there's always exceptions.
But you'd say that the bad winters have the biggest impact, like 3 or 4 years down the road, as far as numbers of deer go.
I
and
think
quality
they
bucks
do
and those numbers.
somewhat.
Yep.
Yeah. I haven't really done a big official study
Yeah,
of it. Yeah.
I've heard a theory that wet summers produce large racks because of all of the green growth in the woods. I don't know if it's true or not. It's just a
Then
theory
I've heard the opposite.
Really?
My guide in Saskatchewan, oh, it rained, so that's going to have, that's why we had small, they always try to have an excuse.
Oh, yeah.
So-
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting. So you're involved with the Antler Skull and Trophy Club, like we said. How many bucks are you scoring a year, would you say, typically?
I'll probably do 25.
25?
Yeah.
How many scores is there?
Right now we have about 28 measures throughout the state. We have 2 Boone and Crockett measures, me and Brian Emerson. He's northern New Hampshire and I'm southern New Hampshire. So.
Gotcha.
And we'll go to 3 or 4 measuring sessions a year. Like we were just in the Milford at the Milford Outdoor Show, and we measured. I measured I think I measured a Boone and Crockett there. Yeah,
From this past year?
yeah. We had some good ones. Yeah. So, but generally I'll just measure up my house. They come at evening, they call me, and they might call me, and I said, boy, there's a measurer closer to you than I am. But if it's Pope and Young, or I said, yeah, or Boone Crockett,
yeah.
come on over. Massachusetts didn't used to have any Boone and Crockett or, Pope and Young measures. So I used to do all Massachusetts, and boy, they had some nice deer down there.
Oh,
They
yeah.
still do.
Yeah.
But now they got some measurers, and they're handling it pretty good. I measure, the Maine deer, people from New Hampshire go over, but I don't measure too many Vermont deer.
No, yeah, I bet you don't.
Would you,
How'd you get into scoring?
Well, if you look on there's a big buck in the background. My dad, when he was in college in New York, he got a huge buck. It was like a 150s, and it was always above the fireplace, and I was just so proud of that deer. Then he had a book by Gransel Fitz, and he's the one that made the Boone and Crockett measuring system. So I read that book, and it showed how to measure it. I measured that buck 5 times. I was just so into that. Then, then they got the New Hampshire club going, and I was measuring for that for a few years. And we just felt like we had one Boone and Crockett measurer, but he was a biologist. He didn't do all that much. So we, wrote a letter to Boone and Crockett and said, we need some more measurers in New Hampshire. So I was about the most, gung-ho of the people. Okay, Roscoe, why don't you go, and Lou Marston. So we went out to Missoula, Montana, the headquarters of Boone and Crockett, and it was like a 3 or 4 day course, measuring everything, muskox or mountain lion or buffalo, whatever. We learned how to do it. Then there was a test at the end, and we passed. So it's just, I enjoy doing it so much. I get to handle some true trophies and meet nice people, and just, if you weren't measuring them, occasionally you'd see it in the newspaper or something. Mm-hmm. But people had no idea what we have. Like, they look in our record book and like, oh my gosh, look at that.
I think social media has really helped.
Oh, it really
at putting
has.
New Hampshire on the map.
Yeah.
definitely.
And I like to brag about our big buck, so when I measure a big one, it goes on Facebook.
Yep.
Kind of going into recent years, I mean, over the past 5 years with all the deer you've measured, how would you rank like the last 5 years as far as the quality of deer? Would you say they're getting better, or some years better than others? Can you think of a year that was the best out of the past 5 or 10?
I'd say the last 3 or 4 years have been the best, because we had a kind of a lull. Like, we weren't getting a Boone and Crockett for every maybe 4 years.
Really?
But we're getting like 2 a year now.
So it's improving.
Oh yeah, it is really improving. We're living in the good days
right now
of deer hunting.
Yeah,
definitely.
Really?
Yeah.
I wonder if it's because more guys are starting to pass on deer. If that's a thing that's really catching on.
Yeah, boy. When I was younger, I mean, like, if you pass a deer, you're crazy.
Yeah.
And
That's my area of Vermont right now.
Yeah, and when I started passing deer, like my dad would get like, "Why'd you pass that deer? Why'd you?" Well, then I get a big one. Like, oh, okay, I guess that's why you passed the deer.
Yeah.
So I mean, I was so proud of my dad, and he'd probably shot 50 deer in his life, and I've taken about 170 deer myself now.
Wow.
Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, Saskatchewan, pretty much. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So this past year would you say another great year, 2021?
Yeah.
Not the best. Or...
I hammered the big ones this year.
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sitting in my stand, and I got this 4-pointer walks by me, and it's just kind of wandering around me. I didn't know why. It was around 10 o'clock in the morning. Then 2 does show up, and he knew the does were there. So he was just pushing the does around. So I've got my cell phone. I'm videoing this buck chasing the does. Then I look down, and there's this massive rack walking under me, like a 22-inch wide buck. And it walks right under me. He didn't smell me, and he stops about 15 yards away, right in front of that little buck and the does. And he's just looking at him, and I put my phone down
Yep.
and shot him. Yeah. So he jumped. He ran about 50 yards, stood there, and then it took off. So I waited a little bit, and the little buck and does just stood there. It was the rut, and the mind was not right. So I walked up. I found some blood, and I saw where we'd run down the hill, and I wasn't finding any blood. And I had an appointment in half an hour to meet a lady on a project, and like, oh my God, I don't want to leave this deer, but I had to do. It was very important, so I left. I went over and did my appointment, and I told her, I shot a huge buck. Let's make it quick. So I get back there, and it's like a 20-minute drive, and I start looking, and now it's been like an hour and a half after shooting it, and I'm hearing ravens down at the brook in the bottom, like, whoa, that's, I know what ravens mean. So I headed towards the ravens, and as I headed, there's some more blood, a little bit more blood. And I got down to the brook, and all of a sudden the ravens all take off. And there's my monster laying right in the brook. Yeah. And I was very happy with that buck. Yeah. It's 22 inches wide, 192 pounds, but
Beauty.
I was just so happy with that deer.
What'd that buck score?
It grossed in the 140s. It netted 135.
Beautiful. Clean, nice clean 8-pointer.
Yeah. So Vermont season started a week or so later. So we head up to Rygate, and I sit at the super stand. That's what we call it.
That pinch you're talking about.
Yeah, that pinch point. I mean, the last 12 years, I've taken 12 mature big bucks from that one stand. So I get to the stand, and it's like we get there at 6, and now it's 7, and I haven't seen a deer yet. I'm like, what's wrong, And 8 o'clock, a good 8-pointer went by, and I shot it. It's just, boom, my son heard me shoot, so I took care of the deer, and the next morning, Patrick sat at the stand, and 8 o'clock, he shot an 8-pointer.
Really?
Same stand.
Back-to-back days.
Back-to-back
No
days.
kidding.
Yeah.
Similar bucks?
Yeah. Mine was actually probably a year older, but let's go check the deer in, get back home, and do something in New Hampshire. So I drive over to Groton and report it. Then I get a flat tire, and that was pardon my French, that was a bitch to fix, but we got that fixed. Then we drive 2 hours back down to Raymond, New Hampshire, and unpack all our camp gear and all that, and we were able to get in the woods at 2 o'clock in my wood lot. And I'm bow hunting at this point because I've already got my buck, and I mean it was peak of the rut. I got deer chasing all around me, blowing and all that. Then around 4 o'clock, bang, I hear shot, and boy, that's the right direction, distance for Patrick. And about 20 seconds later, I got a call. Daddy, I just got a buck bigger than yours. So, so I went over, and oh my God, 165-inch
Wow.
buck, just a huge, 23 inches wide.
Oh my gosh.
And I didn't know, I mean, I have a lot of cameras out. I didn't know that my buck or that buck were alive. My buck I had pictures of the year before. This buck, the neighbor named him the General. It was just, for 5 or 6 years, it was this big giant buck that we were never able to get. And Patrick got him. So right next to that stand, I have a big sanctuary that the deer just come out of, and I had a camera in there. So like a week after we shoot both of our deer, I checked the camera, and sure enough, the General and my deer are parading back and forth all day, right there. Which I respect the sanctuary. I want them to have a place where they're not going to get bothered. But it works.
Yeah.
Not everybody has enough land to do that,
Right.
but it works.
Yeah. So would you say, of the deer you kill, how many of them would you say you have on camera? Do you have most of them on camera? Do you know that they're in there, would you say, for the most part, or not?
I'd say quite a few are. Like, it's if you have one big buck you're after, it is so hard to get that one big buck.
Yep.
I have 5 big bucks.
Yeah.
I will get one of those big bucks.
Law averages, you're bound to
Yeah.
run into one.
And in Vermont, I got cameras there. I'm shooting the biggest buck on the property every year.
Yeah.
Yeah. A few years back, it was second biggest in Caledonia County for rack.
Nice.
But
What'd that one score?
I'm not gonna tell you. But it was very good for Vermont.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No
Nice.
kidding.
Yeah.
So 2021 was definitely special. That was your best year yet for you and your son, no doubt about it.
Yeah, because Patrick never hunted Vermont much, and he actually said that Vermont buck meant more to him than the New Hampshire one, because occasionally at that pinch point they cross really high, and it's like 100 yards shot, and you have just a half a second through 2 little openings. We're going to do some work on it this fall, this summer, but he made a really good shot, and then I've shot several way at that peak. So when there's lead in the air, there's always a chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, it is.
So would you say you definitely manage your Vermont areas and your New Hampshire areas the same as far as building a sanctuary for them and then targeting the pinches and stuff? So it's very similar as far as how you manage them?
Yeah, my Vermont property's 378 acres, and a good chunk of it's just some crazy ledges and steep areas that the deer go into, and I pretty much stay out of it. I mean, just part of it because it's just crazy, but the deer don't mind it, and they pop right out of that that sanctuary. So the saddle is in the perfect spot.
Yeah. Interesting.
What is your largest New Hampshire buck you've taken?
Well, I've taken several over 200. I got one with a bow a few years ago. It was 204. Then I got a straight 200-pounder. But I got quite a few in the 190s. Some deer will just never become 200 pounds. Just some people are basketball players and some aren't. So they'll go their whole life being a 180-pounder.
But growing a great rack.
But
yeah.
Yeah.
Just in there.
Yeah, tell us the story of your biggest or favorite New Hampshire whitetail.
Well, I don't know. Well, I could tell about tripod.
Tell us about that.
I had this monster buck that I and my neighbor had been after for many years. And he just had a huge rack, like 160-inch plus rack. And he looked like a 230-pounder. He was just a brute. And actually some of the other neighbors got pictures of him too, but I was just after him. I was in my stand bow hunting early in the morning, and there was a buck fight just out of sight, and they were just fighting. Then he comes out, and I shot 3 feet over his back with my bow. Then I saw him a couple other times. I'm driving down the logging road, and he's on the edge. He sees me, and he runs off. But a few years back, I'm sitting in the stand muzzleloader season, and I look over, and oh my God, there he is. This huge rack. He's 40 yards away, rubbing on a tree. And there's like a hemlock right, it's just like a 6 foot tall hemlock. But I could see his neck and his head. So I took aim, I shot, and he bolted, took off, but his left front leg, he just wasn't using it. So he runs off, and I wait a while. I go check for blood, and I find a little bit, but I just can't find him. So I call the dog lady, and she got there pretty quickly, and we chased him around. And finally, the last we saw him, he just ran across this big swamp as fast as a normal deer could go. So we figured it's not ethical to keep chasing it, and it's going to survive. So, and I just kept looking for this deer. Well, so I hit him muzzleloader season early November. Well, December 4th, I'm checking my cameras, and oh my God, there he is with 3 legs. 1 leg was completely missing. Like, what the heck?
Wow.
So, I mean, how can you shoot a leg off? And I just felt like crap. So deer hunting season got over, and I kept checking my camera. I'm getting pictures of him. He got along really good with 3 legs. He's just walking along. So that winter, it was a pretty tough winter. I kept looking for him, and I'd find a deer leg bone with a tarsal gland. Like, oh my God, there he is. So I just searched. I knew it was a buck, but I wouldn't find it. So and I just kept searching. So around August, the next year, I'm checking my cameras, and oh my God, there he is. A 3-legged deer. He went from 165 inches or so to like 110 inches. He's got like 15 points on it. He's got points everywhere, but it's just a small frame. So hitting him in the leg affected his antlers. Mm-hmm. And I knew he was a very old deer because we'd been after him for 5 years, and he had to have been 5 years old when we first saw him because he was so big. So muzzleloader season, I'm sitting in the stand, and a doe pops out, and here comes Tripod. So I'd showed the pictures of him on Facebook, and one of the people, let's call him Tripod. So that name stuck. So Tripod pops out. He's got a smile on his face, and he's after the doe. He's getting along okay, and I let him have it.
Yep. Sealed the deal, had to end the story.
I sealed the deal, but when I get a mature deer, I always save the front teeth. I send them to Whitetail Analytical Labs in Missoula, Montana. And I sent the teeth over, and Tripod was 10 and a half years old.
Wow.
He's my oldest New Hampshire deer.
That's impressive. That is impressive. Yeah. What a smart animal, huh?
He was just knew where to. He had a hiding spot. Mm-hmm. But I got a Vermont doe in the muzzleloader 10 years ago. It was 11 and a half years old. So I encourage people, spend your $30, save the 2 front middle teeth, and make sure you cut it real low and get the roots. And a few months later, you'll get the results. Fortunately, I don't have to spend that money in Vermont anymore, because when it's gun season, you shoot a buck. If you give them a tooth, they will send the tooth to a place like Whitetail Analytical Labs, and you'll get a true age. Not a biologist looking at mouth and saying, he's a fawn, he's a year and a half old, or he's older. Mm-hmm. This is exact. I mean, it's a science, 99%. Right? Yeah. It's like they cut the tooth, they stain it, and they count the rings like on a tree, and it's foolproof.
Yep.
What did the Tripod weigh with 3 legs and the stress of only having 3 legs for a year? What did he weigh when you finally got him?
155 pounds.
155.
Yeah. See, he lost some weight.
Just the stress of it.
But I was there was a biologist there, and he was weighing 180-pound deer at the time, and that deer that they were weighing, he said, look at that guy's deer and look at your deer. Tripod was short and stocky.
Yep.
And the other one was long and lanky. So deer come in different shapes.
Yep.
But in his prime, he was over 200 pounds. He was, what a brute.
King of the hill.
He was.
Yeah.
But I've got 30 cameras out every year, and I've had similar deer. We had one, I called him Big Boy, and the neighbor got him. He was 162 inches. We were after him a long time, and he had a 10-inch drop tine, another drop tine. So every year I have some very, very respectful deer for size on my property.
That's great. Huh. So kind of rolling, we just get a New Hampshire story. What's your best Vermont buck story if you get one for us?
Well, I was sitting in super stand, and it was about 9 o'clock in the morning, and a doe and a skipper come trotting by pretty fast. Well, I knew what was up, and right behind them was this big, huge buck, big rack, and I let him have it, and he ran off. I shot twice. I hit him twice, but I didn't find much blood, And I ended up going about 150 yards, and oh my God, I got him. He was huge. I think he wasn't my heaviest Vermont deer. He was around 190, but he had a huge rack and extra points. And I mean, after all the shit bucks, he was. I mean, and like, you know, my regular 8-point, I was really happy with him. But last year, all summer and hunting season, I had 2 monsters on my wood lot. I mean, they were 130, 140 inches. So to me, that's a monster for Vermont.
Yeah, yeah.
And I got so many, they just loved my apple trees. And they're there all the time. And I think they're still alive.
Really?
I really, really wanted them, but we got the 2 next biggest in size. And the neighbors knew about them too.
Yep.
And I mean, I have friends that take a lot of pictures and don't share them, you know, on social media. I do. I can't help it. For me to get a really huge buck picture and just then erase it. But all my Vermont friends, they start drooling. They know where my land is, and deer don't respect property lines.
No.
The neighbors shoot a lot of the big bucks that I'm after.
Yep.
Good for them. Yeah. But I feel I'm making the deer get bigger, so we're all having better deer because of it.
Yeah, management definitely helps.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
You're living proof of that, especially when you look around here, what you got going on, no doubt about it. All right, Roscoe, for somebody that wants to get into hunting in the Northeast and wants to learn how to do it, what would be your best advice for them to get into it, to learn? What would you tell them to do? Look at maps, boots on the ground? How would you go about it?
Well, I was raised in a hunting family, so I had advantage. So, you know, Dad showed me how to do it and all that. But if you don't have that type of thing, just study maps. I mean, Onyx Hunt is a good app that I use, and look for pinch points. So like my Vermont one is just terrain, it's cliffs and stuff. My New Hampshire ones are all just swamps.
Okay.
They have to go by there, and so you just sit there and wait for them. And there's not much sign, because, you know, some of these beaten down paths you see, they're done at night, or porcupines doing it, or whatever. So a lot of my good stands, most people would overlook. And like when I'm surveying, I'm walking around, boy, this is a perfect pinch point, and look up, oh, there's a tree stand there already. So a lot of people figured it out one way or another. And like when I'm walking in the woods, if I jump a deer, I just think, why was that deer there? And then, okay, then I kind of study it, and sometimes it was there for a good reason. It was just, because of something that caused it to be there, a pinch point. So terrain features are good. Don't hunt on sterile land. I log my properties, and there's always plenty of food. And maybe 15 years later, now you need to do it again in a different area just to keep regenerating. So find an area that's been logged and just walk around it. I mean, I don't find a scrape and sit at it or find a rub and sit at it. I don't use scents. I shot 6 deer last year. I didn't use any scent. I haven't used scent in years. So we just, hopefully they don't smell you. Just do your best, sit in the right spot. But but talk to other people. People, if you get friendly, maybe they'll share the secrets. Maybe they won't.
Yep.
Like my neighbor does food plots. Well, I give him bad food plot advice because I don't want him to have a better food plot than me. Hopefully he's not listening to this. But if the guy is half an hour away, well, I'll give him good food plot advice.
Yeah, that's funny.
Huh.
You gotta stay one step ahead of the game, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's funny.
So you think it comes down to understanding how the deer move through areas and how they use certain types of terrain and stuff? Is that what you're kind of
Yeah,
coming
well,
down to?
first thing, they don't want to die.
Yeah, yep.
So if you just plop yourself in the middle of the woods and just hope to see something, yeah, occasionally you're going to get one. But if you're sitting at a place that concentrates deer movement, I mean, you're going to see 3 or 4 more times deer. And I had a guy sitting I took him out last year, and he's always brown as down, first deer. And I said, the rule is it has to be an 8-pointer. He had 2 bucks come out. They're like 4-pointers. He watched them fight for like an hour. He'd never seen anything like that before. It's because
You would have just
the
shot.
second you would have shot him, and you'd never seen that. He was like, he said, Roscoe, that was the best day of my life watching these deer. So he's passed a few deer after this, but he's not really, waiting for the big 8-pointers yet.
Mm-hmm. Getting into it. Kind of to put a definition to sterile woods, what are you exactly saying when you say sterile woods? Is it big mature growth or?
Yeah, if the sun doesn't get to the ground, there's no food. The only food is if it's an oak grove, there's going to be acorns. So, like, if it's a big mature forest, the pines, if you can see 100 yards, a deer's not going to be there in daylight. I mean, yeah, maybe one gets jumped and goes through, but I like it nasty and thick, or on the edge of it. It just that has food. If you've watched a lot of deer and passed them up, all the deer does, they walk, take 2 steps, and they put their mouth down, and they're constantly feeding. They're just constantly feeding as they're going through the woods. And, mushrooms or, browse or whatever, but they're always eating, and they know to be where there's food, and they know to hide, and they're not going to bed down out in the open.
Yep.
So it just has that look to it. I mean, if you go on my property, there's deer poop everywhere. It's just poop everywhere.
Just living in there.
Yeah, they're living in there. And then I'll go surveying somebody's property, and it's just no sign. Mm-hmm. And people are hunting it. Like, boy, why are you hunting here?
Yep. Huh. So, kind of one more thing before we wrap it up here. As far as when you're looking at pinch points, I know you said is it like an area where it's just the path of least resistance, where maybe a deer can't get through for a ways, like 2 swamps, and you're finding just a little hole through it, essentially? Is that kind of what you're...
Yeah, I mean, a deer doesn't... They'll go anyway. They will walk through water and all that, but if they don't have to...
Gotcha.
And it's just convenient for them to go through. And in the pinch, you're going to see the coyotes, and I mean, everything is going through that pinch point. So it's convenient for them.
Just kind of a compression area. Everything's pushed.
Yeah,
in.
it's like an hourglass.
Yep.
There's two wide ends and a skinny area between them, and they go right through there. But I don't overdo it. I rarely ever hunt a stand more than like once or twice a week. I've got lots of good stands. I have so many good stands, and I'll just it's nice to know nobody sat here for a week and it's not going to stink. Okay. I mean, if you have a giant buck you're after and you keep sitting in the same stand, you've ruined the stand. Your smell stays there. And don't overdo it with your cameras on your good spots. I mean, I'll put a camera on a food plot because I don't care. They're coming out at night. But I'll put it on my real good pinch points, and my one really good stand that I've got 5 big bucks on. I don't bow hunt there. I don't go there till until the rut starts, and I never have a camera there. Well, I have a camera there. I know the big buck is going there.
Yeah.
I already know it. I don't need to, because there's that 10% of the big bucks that don't like it. I mean, some bucks just don't care.
Yeah,
they like to kind of show off, but what about the 10%? And so I'm not going to blow it.
I put them up high and tilt them down. That seems to work pretty good.
Yeah.
They don't see them as much. When I used to put them around hip height when I first started out, I'd get a lot of big bucks and they'd look right at it and I'd never get a picture of them again. But ever since I started putting them up high, seems like they don't see them as often.
But they smell the cameras too.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I think they can sense them going off sometimes too.
They hear the camera.
Yeah.
I mean, mine are black flash, but when it goes off, I mean, deer are not people. And if we got time for this, some people, they go by the moon phase. I know people they're going to go to Saskatchewan and they set the calendar. Oh, I don't want to go that week. The moon is wrong. So in QDMA, they had a biologist that did all the studies on it, and many biologists have done the same thing. They radio collar bucks and does, and they studied them for years all over the United States. During different moon phases, they found there's zero difference in movement. You're wasting your time.
I've heard the same thing.
So you hunt when you can hunt.
Yep.
I've had days, twice I've had only 15 minutes to hunt. I drove to my spot. One time I ran to the woods just to get to the stand. I went by another hunter. He's like, what's this guy? Then I stopped. I got to my stand. Here comes a deer, and I shot it. It's that golden 15 minutes at the end of the day. So,
yep.
I mean,
the moon doesn't mean a dang thing, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I know one hunter that, I can't go out today, and I got to mow the lawn, and you don't have 20 minutes, half an hour. It's just
get in the woods when you can.
Yes, yes.
Got to be in the woods to get a deer, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I heard a biologist say that does will come into heat because of daylight. The amount of daylight is what I've heard. They can kind of narrow it down to a lot of deer that's like...
Yeah, they'll say, well, we had a late rut this year because it was hot and this.
Yeah, but it's not, yeah.
Deer have to have their fawn the right time of year. If they have it too early,
yep,
there might be snow on the ground and all that.
Fawn's gonna
if they
die.
have it too late, they're a month too late. So every year, the average day is within a day of itself.
Exactly.
You always have a few early ones.
Yep.
You always have a few late ones.
Yep.
But they have to, and it's the daylight and this and that. It's ingrained in them when to do it, and it works because they have their fawns at the perfect time.
And Mother Nature's amazing because in South Florida, the does come into estrus in July, in August, because that gives their fawns the best chance of making it because they're born when it's not, I guess.
They have dry weather.
Dry season.
Yeah, so our winters are a problem, their dry season.
Yeah, so their bucks are hardhorn chasing in July. Their rifle season, I'm pretty sure, starts in the beginning of August.
Really?
Which is just nuts to me to think. Can you imagine being down in the Everglades hunting these, scrubby looking whitetails, chasing does in 120 degree weather? It would be wild. But I think it's amazing that Mother Nature is so perfect, really, that it can, Doesn't matter where they are. They know when
They
to
have
come
a
into heat
condition window
for
and
the
that gives them
fawn.
the best chance of their
For
survival.
the fawn.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And
That's awesome.
Yep.
That's crazy. Well, do you have anything else you want to add, Roscoe? Anything you can think of? Any more tips? Anything? Or we can wrap it up. It's up to you.
No, I'm good, but just fall. I'll be getting a big one this fall.
We'll have to follow back up with you for sure. But thanks for doing this with us. It was a lot of fun. I
I
learned
appreciate
a lot
it.
about deer in this area, and I think a lot of people will be able to take away from it. So
great podcast.
we'll see you on the next one, and thank you.
Okay, thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Hey, a quick word about STAGR Gear. We're a new company coming out this year that's making products specifically designed for hunting and tracking in the Northeast. We got some sweet, innovative products that are built with Big Woods heritage, but have some modern twists and tweaks to them that are really going to give you an advantage out there. So you can check us out on Instagram or Facebook, or you can go on our website, www.stagrgear.com. See you out there.